Hello and welcome to the CPA Intelligence and Ethics Show Emergency Pod. My name is Garth Sheriff. I'm the host of this, podcast, I think. I'm trying to figure out how this relates to ethics and intelligence. This is a post-game of Game 7 of the World Series. I don't know if you can tell who I support, but it's the Blue Jays. I support the Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays. Baseball is a cruel sport. Now, this is an emergency podcast, mainly because I think I need a little bit of a place to get across some emotions. A lot of emotions from yesterday. Many emotions. I'll be honest with you. I actually didn't watch the game from the beginning. I went to a jazz concert because I thought I'd be too emotionally invested in this game. And then when I got out of the jazz concert, at least the score would be there and I wouldn't have to be invested in this game. But no, that's not what the Fates had in mind. It invested me in this game. At 10 o'clock, I didn't even see Bo Bichette's home run. And it was heartbreaking. And I'll be honest with you. So the reason I'm doing this as a podcast is one, I will relate it back to the show that this is supposed to be about. But this could have been on the Fraud Complex, another podcast I host with Josh, if the Dodgers had lost, if the Blue Jays had won. Josh and I had talked about doing an emergency pod about the Dodgers being frauds because they have such a big payroll and they lost. That didn't happen, clearly, from Game 7. And Josh didn't want anything to do with this. How does it relate to that podcast where I still need to conclude my Wirecard story that's been in the pipeline? I'll get that out onto the next episode at some point. One, when you go through something like this, where are your ethics? This is at the lowest point. Something comes at you. This is where you have to kind of pick yourself up. And if it's work-related, others, you're in a low state for whatever reason, this is where you need your ethics and your principles first. And that's one tie-in to the podcast. Intelligence and artificial intelligence is the other part of that podcast. I wish yesterday was a simulation, an artificial intelligence simulation. And then when I detach, it was a lesson maybe on dealing with difficult situations or uncontrollable situations. And then when I detached, none of that really happened. And so that is the tie-in to artificial intelligence. Those are very weak tie-ins to the ethos of this podcast. But I did want to do something for myself and for those that are maybe Toronto fans. There's a lot of fans cheering for Toronto. I work with a lot of people in the US, and they were sending me their well wishes because I think there was a consensus that the Dodgers were not the most well-liked team, especially now for me. I was kind of neutral to the Dodgers. I lived in Los Angeles for a while, but I'm a Blue Jays fan. I have really strong childhood memories of 1992 and 1993 when they won the World Series back-to-back. I had stepped away from baseball because it's a lot to manage in terms of following that sport. 100 and X, it used to be 162 game season. I think it's longer. But they brought me in, this Blue Jay team, with their grit and their surprise season. And as a sports fan, I do have superstitions. But then in our home, we have a backyard. I saw a Blue Jay twice in the last 2 weeks. And I had the thought process that maybe this is going to happen. Maybe they're going to win the World Series. They're going to beat the Dodgers. And I try to calm myself down. Again, some of the tying this back to artificial intelligence, maybe I should have used Google's portraits, where you can talk to a coach about how you're feeling with your emotions, or Pi, which is an AI conversation tool when you're going through things. And, as a sports fan, you try to navigate your ups and downs, you try to stay even-keeled. I remember the Mariners. I thought, boy, the Mariners must feel really bad, Seattle Mariners, when George Springer hit that home run. Boy, I don't want to be them. That's all I thought, to be honest with you, because as a sports fan, it is sometimes harder to lose, especially the way the Blue Jays lost. You can go 6 ways to Sundays in terms of how they lost that game. I don't want to go over it because you're thinking about this podcast, and if you've listened to the other ones, you're like, what is the ethics intelligence part of this? Well, I did try to do it. Maybe I'll try to do it again. here, but it was a series of events, almost like ChatGPT, how it came into existence, a series of incredible events, very low probability that all these events would happen. And in this case, they did. And I watched that game. I tried to calm myself down, to go to have a nice rest. I had nightmares about that game as I was sleeping. I'm like, did that happen? And this podcast is now serving as some sort of mechanism for me to move on. That's a big part of decision making and ethics for CPAs and other professionals. And also in artificial intelligence is how we move on and deal with things as they come. So I'm using this podcast for that reason. I am smiley here, but inside I'm a bit broken by this game, and I'm a bit broken by baseball. Baseball is a beautiful sport. I grew up with this sport. I love the sport. I had a Roger Clemens book on how to pitch. I tried to throw the curveball. In that book, it actually said, don't throw a slider when you're below 12 because it could hurt your elbow. He had these rules in it. But I tried to throw that slider. I didn't care. I might have hurt my elbow. But boy, the Toronto Blue Jays were the team that I cared about the most when I was a kid. I listened to the radio and all the games, and I cared opening day. I remember 1985 when they were up 3-1 against the Royals, and George Brett single-handedly beat them to win the ALCS and go to the World Series. We have had some up and downs, but I was a kid, and this is now nearly at 50 years old. So I'm trying to understand if I'm better at taking these type of sports losses now than when I was younger. I'm going to say I'm better because I recognize that I don't want to get too involved with this situation. So that's why I went to that jazz concert. It's a wonderful jazz concert. It was a band from North Africa, and they were just beautiful as French language. It was comforting. I didn't check the score during the concert. I said, I'm going to listen to this beautiful music. Then I got out and I saw they were up 3-1. And then I had to go home on the subway ride. One of the considerations, I was in downtown Toronto, was if they win and I'm watching this jazz concert and it ends after they win, I'm not going to be able to leave downtown. It's going to be mass chaos. Well, that didn't happen. But on the subway ride home, I watched the game and I got involved, and I said I wouldn't get involved. That way, the level of deepness, and I did. And I'm not going to, there's so many puns. I haven't gone on the internet, as it were. I don't want to see anything about that game. I don't want to see interviews. I don't want to see highlights. I went to get a haircut today. They had TVs going. I tried to keep my eyes down. So clearly I'm affected by what happened. I'm trying to tell myself, you know what? It's baseball. I didn't do anything. I'm just, my day is going to continue. But that's not the way sports work. Sports, if you're a sports fan, and you know this, it kind of creates an irrational connection that gets into your brain and give you some really high highs, like the Dodgers fans are feeling right now. Ugh. But the lows are bad. This was, man. I've been through some tough losses as a sports fan in Toronto. I'm not even a Leaf fan. I'm not even a Maple Leaf fan, so I can't say I've been through those. I'm not a big hockey fan. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen something like this in my sports fandom, something where I really care about the team. I am drawing a blank. I don't think in the history of my life I've ever seen something this terrible happen to my team. The team that they could have won in so many different ways. And the city, yes, I don't want to give Schadenfreude to the Dodgers fans, because sometimes Schadenfreude is what you live for. So I don't know if other fans are like this, but when, the Blue Jays beat the Mariners, I'm like, what are the Mariners fans saying? And a little bit of, that's not the best thing to say. Ethics tie into the podcast. Just, get a little joy from the sports misery of others. And you know why? Because you can come back around. And it has come back around. So this could be something the Dodger fans listen to and they take great joy in because of the Schadenfreude, the sadness deep in my voice, coarse voice, not a jazz voice that I'm trying to emulate here after seeing the wonderful jazz performance. It's just sadness. I'm getting over it. Thank you for asking. I'm still wearing the Blue Jays hat indoors. I don't know if I'll wear it outdoors, but just for the Dodger fans, I guess, if you want to have some Schadenfreude and you want to know how the city's doing, it's not great. The city's not doing good. I did some errands this morning. It's beautiful fall day here in Toronto. It's actually a wonderful day. It would have been wonderful if they would have won because the day is bright. And it feels like they won just by the weather, but they didn't because it should really be thunder, lightning, and rain, and cats and dogs should be biblical. But it's wonderful. It's a beautiful day. And so as I went to go and get a haircut and do some grocery shopping, I looked around and saw my fellow Torontonians, and we're all having our eyes a little bit sort of to the ground. And those with Blue Jay hats, I was not wearing one outside, but they wore it not with the same confidence they were wearing yesterday. They're kind of like, it's a little chilly, I need a hat. Let me grab that Blue Jays hat and I'll wear it outside. And yeah, so the city is very quiet. It's almost like a library right now. We're all processing this. The thing that the Blue Jays did, not to me, because I have been a Blue Jays fan, I left the game of baseball when the Montreal Expos were done wrong by Major League Baseball. That's another story. I think Netflix is doing a documentary. I really love Vladimir Guerrero, the father, Pedro Martinez, Randy. I mean, there were some great players on that team from 1994, and there was a strike and the team folded or was taken away. That might be an episode for the Fraud Complex. That might actually tie to the nature of the podcast. But what this Blue Jays team did, because Ernie Clement makes me he's a symbol of the team, this gritty, fun, together team, is they brought in everybody. They brought in kids. They brought in people who didn't follow baseball. How many conversations? Do you watch baseball? I don't really watch it, but I'm excited. And then that's the thing about, if you know baseball, like I remember Bill Buckner's for the Red Sox. If you know baseball, this is a cruel sport of all the sports. I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic here because, there are other sports. I was just talking to somebody yesterday. This was a little bit of thinking about the future. We were talking about Baggio's for Italy in the World Cup. I forget what year, 1993 or whatever. I don't want to bring this up, but Baggio penalty kick kicked it over the crossbar, and everyone wasn't a great penalty kick, and it was a tragic thing for Italy. And it was that sort of, oh my gosh, what a moment. You don't want to go through a moment like that, and you don't want the people, the fans, right? And again, sports, we do have to take a grain of salt, but it's hard. So I was thinking about that. I talked to somebody about it yesterday, and I'm like, I hope we don't go through that, because it's better to lose 10-1. It's better just to have the game get away than to lose like we did. And all the fans that were brought along that weren't necessarily baseball fans just discovered how cruel a sport this is. It is cruel. It can be cruel. And I don't know what the learning lessons here are. If it's to never watch baseball again or any sport, I don't know. Never get your heart involved with these things, because you can always say they had a great season and this and that, but man, it's not the time. It's just, so the city is going through a wake. Anyway, I'm going to try and relate it back to the CPA Intelligence and Ethics show, which I have to record the Wirecard series. So listen to that series. It has nothing to do with the World Series. It's a massive scandal and fraud that took place in Germany. But this will sort of be an in-between podcast. Again, I was going to say, Josh said he was busy today, so the Fraud Complex may have been the more likely place for this, but I think he saw that this could be a very difficult episode to co-host with me. He said, I'll just let you do your thing, Garth, and you find a place to let out your emotions. And, I hadn't bought a baseball cap in years. I actually went to a mall in Toronto where everybody's buying baseball caps, Toronto Blue Jay hat, and bought one. And I said to myself, am I given the bad juju, the bad sort of superstition, bad luck? This is what a sports fan goes through. Irrational. Totally irrational. Control versus uncontrol. I had no control over that game, but that game had control over me and my emotions. So I knew I got into the game too far when I did start yelling and screaming very loud for all kinds of things. I don't want to recap those moments where I thought the game was over in more favorable ways than it ended, because it does hurt. You can see the joy and the pain. So yeah, so if I was going to tie this back to the actual podcast that this is related to, I'd say, when you're down professionally because your personal life or professional life, here's some advice. Don't make big decisions today. Don't make the decisions on a particular complicated client file or if you're a Blue Jay fan, Dodger fan, do whatever you want. Who cares? A life decision, professional decision, the ethics, you're compromised if you're like me right today. And today I said, I'm going to open a book, read a book, go for a walk, run some errands, record a podcast. That debatable whether I should be doing this. You can let me know. Leave a Spotify or Apple review and said, you know what? Wrong choice here. But you learn. It's still, not necessarily an ethically challenging choice about recording a podcast versus other things. So I take it light today, do some mindfulness. I'm going to tell myself that this is just sports. It's fun. It's inconsequential. It's funny that I'm telling myself this. My physiological self is not agreeing with me at this point. It might later on. This is such a cosmic rip in space and time for me that I don't know if I can go back. And one of the things we talk about in ethics, and I do a lot of case studies, and that's the fraud complex and this, is you got to go back to learn. You got to go back in time to learn. And I wonder if this is an exception. I don't know if you want to go back on some things. So I don't know if I'll ever go back to November 1st to think about what happened in that game. Tip of the cap to Yamamoto. That individual is amazing, and I wish he was on my team. He was amazing. He really was. And talking about CP, he to me was artificial intelligence. He had a book, a chart, and I want to make sure that person is real, not an AI, because he was amazing. You can't pitch 98 pitches or 6 pitches as a starter the next day, the day before, and do what he did. Not saying I'm getting into the game. We have other people who are doing the post-analysis, Blue Jays blogs, Sportsnet in Canada, ESPN, Fox. I love watching the Fox post-game show. Alex Rodriguez, Big Poppy, Derek Jeter, and I can't watch. I mean, that show brought me a lot of joy because those three are amazing. I forget the host name, but they are amazing. Funny, lively, charismatic. Alex Rodriguez, amazing. What a voice, what an energy on camera. To be honest with you, one of the most exciting things, if the Blue Jays would have won, would have been me to watch that postgame. I enjoyed it when they won and they talked about the Blue Jays. There's no way I'll ever watch any postgame of that in my life. I'm going to cling to my memories of Joe Carter hitting that home run off Mitch Williams and hold on to it really dearly. And hopefully that will bring me some respite in all of this. I've asked my podcast producer, Adam, to throw this out there onto Podcast World today, and I'll put it on LinkedIn. This may have been a terrible idea. I don't know if it's giving any solace to anybody. If I was speaking to the Blue Jays fans out there, or those that were cheering for the Blue Jays, I'd say, the team tried their hardest, they, underdogs, but it's tough. As the words come out of my mouth, I don't feel like I'm really holding on to them. So maybe a few more days, but it was the way they lost that was just, man. And I'm not going to, I said to myself, if I'm going to do this podcast, it's just, tie it back to maybe some learning objectives about, having a tough moment, maybe setting aside more difficult decisions, thinking about how maybe some space will help make good decisions professionally and personally. So again, some very loose tie-ins to the core of the show. You'll listen to Wirecard and you go, boy, this is a real 180 from the show, that CPA Intelligence and Ethics show. But part of this was we had the fraud complex, the Dodgers. It would have been such a good podcast, but that's not the way it goes in sports. When you have an idea of how you're going to lay out something, I could see the Sportsnet team ready to do the post game in the 9th inning, and oh man, I feel bad for them because I didn't see any of the Sportsnet is the Canadian broadcasters for the Blue Jays. I didn't see the post game, but I can only imagine how they must have felt because those were not neutral analysts. Buck Martinez, Dan Schulman, who were calling the game, they cared about the Blue Jays. So I could only imagine they were heartbroken like I was. So yeah, the Dodgers really, did something to harm the city of Toronto, but we'll recover. We'll be fine. Don't worry about us. We got the Leafs. Wait a minute. No, sorry. I should take that back. We got, I'm struggling here. Drake. Oof, that Drake Kendrick Lamar, that got worse just by yesterday. It wasn't looking good for Drake. This makes it worse. I was going to say we got the Raptors but they're not looking great. Let me see, what do we got here? I'm struggling. Well, the city's an amazing city. I love the city. It's great downtown, great food. Now I've turned this into a tourism video for Toronto. My daughter tells me Cat's Eye is going to be here, the K-pop band. That's good that we get some K-pop in the city. And searching for the silver lining here and struggling to find one. So this podcast is out there, maybe a bit of a Yamamoto off-speed pitch in terms of a little off balance from other episodes. Boy, that Yamamoto. I'd love to have him on the podcast to understand what makes him tick. Tie-in is he might be artificial intelligence. They might have cracked AGI with Yamamoto, and we don't know about it because he was amazing. He looked the same, pitched the same. He is really good. I really wanted him on my team because, whew, man. All right, so Dodger fans, if you're getting some schadenfreude from this, you're welcome. I don't know if there will ever be a game series loss like this so that there's a way to come back and do it to you. I don't think so. I don't think this one can be recovered in that way, that a future event will reduce the misery. But what we can take away from it as CPAs, as professionals, as those that were on the other side of this, is that I only have cliches in my head. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I don't know. I'll just say this. Baseball is cruel. That's one. What's some other takeaways? Yamamoto is possibly artificial intelligence, but probably one of the greatest pitchers I've ever seen. Another takeaway, kind of, I didn't want to say don't get your heart involved in these things, but, it's part of the joy of sports fandom. But when it goes this way, you kind of question whether it's worth it. You do. But I don't know if I want that as a takeaway. I'm going to take that one back. Resiliency. There we go. Keep it positive. I had enough energy to record the podcast, to get a haircut, do some grocery shopping, put on this hat, and wear it almost proudly, but not outside. And that's some resiliency. So Toronto fans, Toronto will be okay. I don't think anybody should really converse with a Torontonian for a little while. Just give them a little space or be gentle with them. Actually delivering programs tomorrow, virtual, because I do training programs, virtual, and I'll do a live one. I actually do a live one on Friday. I think we'll be okay for that one because that's in Toronto for a Toronto-based CPA firm. I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be okay by Friday. I cannot tell you. It's November 2nd as I'm recording this. When is that? November 7th or whatever, 6th. That's when I'm running that training. Hopefully we'll be okay because that's actually on artificial intelligence, that workshop, and how to use it inside the firm. That's Torontonian as a facilitator and the person who authored the workshop, and the firm's based in Toronto. We'll see how we are. Hopefully 5 days is enough. There's a period of mourning here, I think, that has to happen. Monday it's too soon still, but I got to go back, right? Resiliency. I'm going to deliver that webinar training with some energy. Maybe not the exact same energy as I had on Saturday or Friday, but some level of energy. And yes, I think I'm approaching the point where this might get more sad. So, fellow Blue Jay fans, fellow sports fans, this was tough. There's no doubt about it. This was extremely tough. My brain does not want to take any of the highlights from that game and put it into the frontal lobe of my space to see it. It is actively shoving those memories into the deep parts of my brain. So which is, honestly, at this point I'm okay with, but at some point I might need to work this through. But thanks for listening for this episode. Thanks, Adam, for producing it and sending it out to the world. Take away whatever you want from it. The ethics, don't make big decisions, challenging ones when you're in a state, if you can, obviously. That's a luxury sometimes if you're in a state of dysregulation. And resiliency. We're going to end positively. That we will pick ourselves back up as people in Toronto and Toronto Blue Jays fans. We just need time. Resiliency and time are related. It doesn't mean you have to be resilient within a few moments of whatever knocked you down. You might need a little bit of space to pick up your breath but you can get back up. If you're asking me if this podcast made me feel better, slightly, I still think it was worth it. All right, until the next time, I'll leave you with this. Baseball is cruel. It is a cruel sport. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm going to go for a walk. Bye.